Our senior Minister Tharman is no stranger to the international stage. He has been and still is on several councils, focused primarily on economic and financial reforms.
Mr. Tharman is on the World Economic Forum's Board of Trustees, contributing to shape global economic agendas and foster dialogue between governments, business leaders and experts. He currently also chairs the Board of Trustees of the Group of 30, a global council of economic and financial leaders from the public and private sectors. He also co-chairs the Global Commission on the Economics of Water, an initiative that addresses water-related challenges and provides recommendations for sustainable solutions. Mr. Tharman recently served on the high-level advisory board established by the UN Secretary-General to make recommendations on multilateral reforms for the UN's 2024 Summit of the Future. He was also the first Asian chair of the International Monetary and Financial Committee, the IMF's key policy forum. In 2021, he also co-chaired the G20 High-Level Independent Panel on Global Financing for Pandemic Preparedness and Response.
Oh, Eugene, let's bring you back into the conversation. Well, we just heard their positions on the IMF, the World WEF, G20 panels. Oh, there's no ignoring Mr. Tharman standing on the global stage and, by extension, a prominent Singapore voice abroad as well. How will his work as president, if he's elected, complement this?
When you look at the role of the president as the chief diplomat of Singapore, I think that plays a very important role, particularly for a small state, right, where the need for our voice to be heard, to be carefully considered, plays an even important role. So I think having a person of Mr. Tharman's standing, will help, Singapore acquire more strategic space, if I can put it that way. The fact that, Singapore's views on international financial and economic matters, will be taken seriously. So I would say that, having a president, who has that international stature and recognition will obviously be healthy for Singapore. I think it is important for small states, to be at the table, for them to have their voices articulated, for their concerns, to be registered at the international fora.
As you mentioned how articulate he is, let's now take a deeper look at Senior Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam's political career and also the big shoes that will need to be filled when he leaves Jurong GRC.
The 66-year-old entered politics in 2001 with the People's Action Party, when he was elected as a Member of Parliament representing Jurong GRC, or Group Representation Constituency. Over 2 decades, he had served as Education Minister, Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. He has been Senior Minister since 2019 and is also currently Coordinating Minister for Social Policies. Mr. Tharman advises the Prime Minister on economic policies and helps to mentor and groom the next generation of leaders. In these roles, Mr. Tharman saw to the investments in Kidsstart that supports the development of children from low-income families and led Skills Future to promote lifelong learning. During the pandemic, he also headed the National Jobs Council that provided jobs and skills training for Singaporeans. With his expertise in finance and economic governance, Mr. Tharman has been serving as chairman of the Monetary Authority of Singapore since 2011. He also manages Singapore's reserves as Deputy Chairman of GIC, Singapore's Sovereign Wealth Fund, and chairs its Investment Strategies Committee. Mr. Tharman also made significant contributions to strengthen Singapore's social mobility. Back in 2015, he famously said he believes in the concept of a safety trampoline rather than a net for those who fall through the cracks. Contesting in Jurong GRC, Mr. Tharman has been re-elected 4 times since 2001. His team won the highest vote share for the PAP with 79.3% of votes in 2015 and received close to 75% at the last election in 2020.
Residents of Jurong are preparing to bid a bittersweet farewell to Tharman Shanmugaratnam as their MP. They praised his approachable and helpful nature, saying they support his decision to run for president. Fellow MP Sean Huang will take over his Meet the People sessions, while other MPs will split his remaining duties in Jurong GRC. Sherry Locke tells us more.
Tharman Shanmugaratnam became MP here in 2001, and since then this place has gone through immense change. Many of its residents have lived here for decades and they've grown up with the neighbourhood, and they tell me that Mr. Tharman will be missed. Fresh facilities have sprung up around Taman Jurong on his watch, including Jurong Lake Gardens and this market. They've helped turn the former industrial estate into a home.
A great transformation here. Before I step in here, in the beginning, when Mr. Tharman came here, it's very dirty.
The housing and also the facilities, amenities, it has increased quite a lot.
This was not here, the shopping center, and a lot of help being given to the residents. I noticed that, from infant to the elderly, yeah.
He had a heart for the vulnerable, supporting initiatives like this one that distributes food to lower income groups. It's this personal touch that struck a chord with residents. He was a friendly presence at familiar neighbourhood haunts and someone to turn to in times of trouble.
Sometimes at coffee shop also, when he come also, he won't be very proud of what he will come and talk to us, shake hand, everything he will do. He will then also tell us everything okay, got any problem?
像你有什么困难啊，他会尽量努力帮忙你。
We did meet him up to ask him to write a letter also lah, to help us to get a school for our first child. So he did that.
He's very friendly and humble. Also come to the house, have a look-see, talk to my parents all.
And they say he'll be a good fit as president.
His wisdom, his knowledge, and then his experience. So why not?
He has good leadership qualities with him actually. So that the leadership qualities will take him in next level actually. He can do a lot of things.
Mr. Tharman has set the bar high, but residents are confident that he's prepared his team to take over.
Last few years he trained all the MPs, so at least I think they have their own capabilities actually. But still they can go and get advice from him actually.
I think if they make Mr. Tharman as a role model, I think they can keep it up to them.
The other MPs in Jurong GRC took to social media to wish him well and vowed to work doubly hard to take care of their residents' needs.
So we heard there, Eugene, how he will be missed, how he has transformed Jurong. I mean, with his resignation, big shoes to fill. How do you think that's going to impact the team, especially with the upcoming, for the next general election?
It's a massive loss, in Jurong GRC, in the sense that, when you look at the track record of Mr. Tharman as the anchor minister for Jurong GRC, Jurong GRC has turned out to be consistently, either the best or second top best performing constituency, as GRC or SMC or single member constituency for the ruling party. And of course, it is his style of mentoring, the younger MPs that I think has also, there'll be something that we missed. So when you think about how he has mentored Minister Desmond Lee, has now gone on to West Coast GRC, and look at the other younger MPs, I think, he will be missed in that sense, but I think that the system that he has put in place, will ensure that the younger MPs, will be able to step up, but I would still say, that these are big shoes to fill.
All right. Should Mr. Tharman be elected, it's not just Jurong GRC. He will be relinquishing an extensive portfolio of roles. Any thoughts on who or which different individuals might be stepping up to fill these, as you mentioned, very large shoes?
I think it is right for you to have pointed out that it will probably be several individuals, right? I don't think we will have one individual who can step up automatically and immediately. But it is also here that we must recall that Mr. Tharman didn't come into politics in 2001 and that he was really the established politician, the recognized statesman. Is something that he has developed over the years, through multiple engagements, through learning. Through engagements with, foreign counterparts as well. So I would say that, we could expect the same, and the question then is whether, our system of political renewal and succession, is able to throw up leaders, like Mr. Tharman, and I think that's the challenge, because if we are not able to, and we have become overly dependent on one or two leaders, then I don't think it is a healthy development for Singapore, So we'll see how it all pans out, but certainly, the political heft, that Mr. Tharman brings with him, will be something that will be sorely felt, and as Prime Minister has pointed out, within the cabinet, and I think certainly, in the ruling party, right? Because he is someone who has that cross-party appeal, right? He's someone who's seen as a decent politician, someone who is able to engage, different Singaporeans from different walks of life, and I think that's something that that will be missed, and hopefully, we'll see other leaders like him in the years to come.
Eugene, of course, this political heft is 22 years in the making. At one point during his stint as DPM, there was, in fact, talk that he could be the next Prime Minister. But Mr. Tharman ruled himself out, saying he's not the man for the job. Fast forward to today, and we have perhaps a better indication why through a sports analogy. Let's take a listen.
I don't know why, but I like guarding the back, and I like planning the game, and I enjoy making a deceptive pass to the person who's really the centre forward to make the most of the ball. So that's me. I'm not a centre forward. I've always been a centre half or half back, and sometimes a full back. But we all play critical roles in that same team.
Mr. Tharman there saying he has always preferred a backline role, coordinating strategy rather than taking the spotlight. How will this help him, this kind of strategy, if he's elected head of state?
Well, let me use a sporting analogy as well. I think if he's elected as president, obviously he's not going to be in the team, right, which is the cabinet. But I think what he'll become is really the referee. Right? As the elected president, he exercises custodial powers over key public sector appointments, as well as the use of past reserves, among other custodial powers that he has. And so he will have the responsibility, right, the constitutional responsibility, ensuring, that the government of the day, abides by the constitution and makes the right decisions with regard to key public sector appointments, and justifies, the drawdown of our national reserves, such as during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would say that, it is a change of roles, but I think it's something that he has pointed out, that he sees, the next stage of his contribution to Singapore not being in the political fray, but above politics.
Right. While we're waiting to see whether Mr. Tharman becomes the referee, as you've mentioned, I just want to bring us back to the fact that actually with the presidential elections, there have been several uncontested ones, and the last one being in 2017. What are the chances, Eugene, of that happening again this time?
Well, I think, certainly you will have hopefuls, who will now go back to the drawing board, do their sums again and see whether, they will have a reasonable prospect of winning. But I also hope that, there will be eligible individuals out there, who will have the gumption and the guts, to say that, they are qualified and that they will bring something to the table, that Mr. Tharman would not. For example, not being from the establishment, being able to bring a different perspective, to issues. That this will resonate with Singaporeans. Because I think, if we have talented individuals, who decide, whether they want to contest or not based on whether they think they will win, and that if they don't think they'll win, they'll rather sit out. I think that will not be good for, the presidency. So I certainly hope that, there will be these candidates, with that gumption and guts, and to give Singaporeans, the opportunity, to decide for themselves, to let Singaporeans give a fair hearing, to the candidates and let Singaporeans decide, who they want to be their elected president.
All right, the last question is a very practical one. Given that the first candidate has thrown his hat into the ring, can we expect the writ of election to be issued very soon?
It's possible, right? I mean, typically, if you go by previous elections, the writ of election would be issued sometime in end July, early part of August. But there could be the possibility that, the writ of election could be held earlier. The Constitution provides for the elections to be held earliest, within 3 months of the end of the current president's term. So I think it's certainly within the ballpark, but I do anticipate that the election will be held in September, which means that the writ of election would probably be issued sometime, towards mid to end August.
Thanks so much for your insights and joining us this evening. We've been speaking with Associate Professor Eugene Tan from the SMU, from Singapore Management University.